a show today, a news show, and he basically said maybe Baez is pulling a Colombo, or he doesn't seem know what he's doing. In the very end, he pulls it together. But I plan every case. I basically assume the prosecution is going to be able to attack every issue I may bring up, and so I already have my answers planned out in the head. And if I can't come up with a good enough answer that makes me believe it, then I just don't go down that path. And that's what I don't think he did. Is I don't think he said, okay, I'm going to say this about the bones. I don't think he took the next logical step is what will the state's response be to that? How will they try to counteract that? And if you don't do that as not only a defense attorney but a prosecutor, well, of course you're going to lose your case because you're never going to have thought enough steps in ahead to be prepared for the mines that you lay for yourself when you make allegations or when you set yourself up. And that's all. It's par for the course for Jose Baez. He clearly doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't, and that's all I can say. I really, he had me at accident, and he lost me at molestation. That's the best way to put it in his opening statement, and I think that's what happened for everybody.
I think you're absolutely right. That's what happened to everybody watching it. And, boy, the Colombo theory is interesting, but I just don't see that happening at all. Richard, we have a lot of phone calls. I want to get to them right now. Caller, hello. I'm not sure who this is. Who is this?
Hello, this is Web Plus Radio.
I'm sorry, what?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Now, if you're hearing feedback, don't worry. It's only the people who are talking that can hear the feedback. It's not going out, so I do apologize for that. We don't know what the problem is. We're trying to fix it. But, yes, we can hear you. What's your question for Richard Hornsby?
Well, first of all, my name is Yuki Watt. I'm a new member on the blog, and I'd just like to thank Richard Hornsby for quite good comments, quite good accommodate, give very well-balanced views, as opposed to some of the sort of things you've seen come on and give them quite have an agenda. But question for Mr. I have two. First one was, I seen he posted that I think at one point they had enough evidence for first-degree murder, and further that was of the view that
Tricia, I can't make out.
I can't understand him either. Caller, I am so sorry. I think you're on a cell phone and you're breaking up. If you could call back, that would be great. Can we go to our next caller? Area code, yeah. Let's see, area
Hello?
code 906. Is that it? 906.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and I apologize for the feedback. Do your best to ignore it. And what's your question for Richard Hornsby?
It's kind of like two. Is the argument that supposedly Cindy had with Casey, is that just hearsay and it's not coming in? And the second thing was, I thought the Anthonys did not use chlorine.
I don't know. If I can answer the law, but I don't know every fact and case. But if in fact you've seen somewhere where there isn't chlorine used in the pool, well, that would be a major screw up by Jose. I mean, I know some people use salt water instead of chlorine, but I'm just throwing this out there. I've never seen salt water used in an above ground pool, but I could be wrong.
Interesting. Well, would it surprise anybody if there wasn't chlorine in the pool after all of this? Nothing would surprise me. And caller, did Mr. Hornsby answer your other question?
Oh, the argument supposedly between Cindy and Casey on the night of the 15th into the 16th, is that just going to be considered hearsay, and that's why it's not coming in?
Well, I don't know why it shouldn't be hearsay if there was it between Casey and Cindy. There's no reason why it shouldn't come in.
Yeah.
You'll have to refresh my memory.
It was a major argument where correct me if I'm wrong, caller, where Cindy actually started to strangle Casey. She was so angry, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And I believe it was Lee that told Jesse.
That's right.
Well, has the state not gotten there yet?
No, they haven't. But they could bring that in, obviously, especially if Casey's on the stand.
That's going to come in. Anything that Casey said basically is going to come in. I did see somewhere on the discussion threads people want to know about the check fraud cases and stuff.
Correct.
I don't know if Judge Perry has basically said he's not going to, because normally you can't bring other crimes in to try to prove the current crime that the person's charged with. However, if it's meant to basically to show the deed or to put everything in context, it is admissible. I don't recall, and it doesn't clear because remember, Cindy hasn't completely testified, and all the witnesses haven't completely testified because the state's kind of doing it in piecemeal. I would think it would be admissible, but I don't know if Judge Perry maybe said, no, it's too prejudicial for you to bring up the fact she was kiting checks. But to me, it would just seem would be par for the course. So that's something that, I think it's at the discretion of the judge, just for those people that wrote on the boards out there about that particular issue. It's kind of up to Judge Perry. Maybe he decided that it was just too prejudicial, and it wasn't absolutely necessary for the state to use in prosecuting the case.
Right, right.
Interesting. Well, thank you, caller. Are you a member of Web Sleuths?
Yes.
What is your name, if you don't mind me asking? I'm sorry, what?
Z45.
Oh, well, welcome. Thank you for calling. We appreciate it. Okay, we're going to go to area code 207. Area code 207, you are on live with Kimster, Richard Hornsby, and yours truly, Tricia, on Web Sleuths Radio. What's your question?
Well, this is Why Not Dive In?
Oh, and, why not dive in? One of our wonderful moderators. Yay.
My question would be, given that the opening statements are not allowed to be considered by the jury, how much is the state going to have to do to unring that bell?
Well, the state can't unring the bell, but here's the thing: is we're really early in the trial, believe it or not. I mean, the scientific evidence alone is going to take weeks because, because the science, like when you put Vass on stand, he's going to be an entire day witness. So we're really early in the trial, but it all depends on what evidence ends up coming out. If the state really was worried about the opening statement still by the time of the end of the trial comes around, maybe Casey actually testifies. The state can actually get up there and they say, Jose Baez promised you that he would present evidence that supported this, and they can actually, read it back directly to him, and they can say, but not one piece of evidence came in, and then they can make the inference that it's because there was no evidence and things like that, or they could just completely ignore it, and unless there was evidence to support it, they can move in limine and say, Judge, Jose Baez cannot even mention these things because there's no evidence to support it. So they have two different ways they could approach it. I think that clearly the better way is to probably take every single claim that Jose Baez made during open statement, break it down very methodically, just like they did the way they're handling the case, and say, he promised you this, no evidence to support it, there's nothing there. And at the end of the day, if the only person that can support these things is Casey Anthony, well, Jose Baez has got really big problems.
That's true, and that very well could be. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Well, I was also wondering, and I've seen this questioned in many threads on Web Sleuths. Okay, so when you have an opening statement, the jury cannot consider it. Can the jury consider closing statements?
No. Anything that a lawyer says is not evidence, period. The only thing the jury is supposed to be able to consider are the evidence that's presented on the witness stand, meaning through the witness's mouths, or the items that are published into evidence, or the jury's instructions. Those are the only three things that the jury can consider as evidence. However, the argument that the lawyers put forward as to what the evidence shows, is just their opinion as to what the evidence shows. It's for the jury to go back and say, yes, I agree with that argument, this is what the evidence shows. But you've got to remember that what the defense says is not the evidence. So unless Casey Anthony testifies, yes, my father made me, give him oral sex when I was 13 years old, there is no evidence to support that. And Jose Baez, one, shouldn't be able to argue it in closing arguments, and two, the jury can't assume that happened just because Jose Baez said it.
So he's absolutely going to have to put Casey on the stand. There's just no question, right?
Remember, Lee still hasn't testified, and he's kind of the wild card in this matter, because let's be honest, he's the first one of them that lawyered up and shut up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and
wow.
And that you just can't forget that. And so the bottom line is, he's the wild card, but assuming that he doesn't say anything, the only other person that could support it is Casey Anthony, and I've got to really wonder if you put Casey Anthony on the stand, because she will literally testify herself in the death penalty. And I've never thought this would have been a death penalty case until Jose Baez made that ludicrous opening statement.
Wow, that's wild, because I never thought it would be either. Our phone number is 818-602-4929. Why not? Is that everything for you, my dear?
I think that does it for me tonight.
Thank you so much. Hey, we're going to go to area code 441 now. Area code 441, welcome to Web Sleuths Radio. What is your question?
Hello, Tricia. It's UK Law. Sorry, I was on my cell phone.
Oh, UK Law. Are you calling from England?
I'm calling from Scotland, but near
Scotland. Fantastic. Welcome, my dear. Welcome.
Anyway,
What's your question?
Anyway, well, I've just before I start, just to thank Richard for all his wonderful posts. It's really been good to get a dispassionate, well-balanced professional opinion. So kudos to Richard. I've got two questions. The first one is, Richard recently said that, he linked to a comment he made where he said the question was, what is, not if she's guilty, but what is she guilty of? And he said he didn't think the state could prove beyond a reasonable doubt first-degree murder, which I could actually understand. My question to Richard is, leaving all that aside, leaving aside what the state can prove in the rules of evidence, what do you actually think Casey Anthony, what crime does he think she actually did commit, regardless of whether or not the state can prove it? And the second question is there anything that happened in the jury selection, for example, this issue with the peremptory challenges having to be announced before the entire jury pool had been questioned, which could mean that any conviction could be overturned on appeal, i.e., are we on a road to nowhere even before we started, so to speak?
Okay, well, let me answer your last question first. Even though Judge Perry was threatening to do the jury selection the way he wanted and Jose Baez objected, at the end of the day, Judge Perry ended up doing the jury selection the exact same way Jose Baez wanted. Jose Baez was able to interview almost every single potential juror they had. He actually exhausted all of his peremptory strikes, so it wasn't like he was striking in the blind. You know, he had already known everybody that was ahead of him. And the only real error I saw that was made in jury selection actually was against the state. I really thought that Judge Perry should have let the woman who said that she would have a hard time imposing a death penalty and a hard time judging people, that this defense challenge on a race basis, I think Judge Perry was wrong in not striking that woman. It was very clear that she would have had a hard time being impartial. But that's the only real error I saw in the way the jury selection was conducted. And so, no, I don't think there's anything in the jury selection that's going to cause this case to come back at all. Now, to get to your first question, here's the thing. Casey Anthony is charged with, the first charge is first-degree murder. Second charge is aggravated child abuse. The third charge is aggravated manslaughter. The first two are based on an intentional act. Basically, not only can the state try to prove the premeditated murder, they can also try to prove what's called felony murder, that meaning that she intentionally was abusing Kaylee, and that resulted in a death. And this is why I've always thought it didn't support a first-degree murder case, because every single witness that I read prior to this trial had said that Casey was an incredibly loving mother. And it's still there today, and I still cannot see how Casey, and I don't care how bad she wanted to party or how much she fell in love with some new boyfriend, within basically a few-month period could go from loving her daughter to, and everybody thinks she's a good mother, to wanting to kill her daughter. What I really think is that she did want to go out and party, and that she was trying to use a way to basically sedate Kaylee so that she could stay out late at night and things of that nature instead of having to go home at a normal time. And that would be aggravated neglect, which is what aggravated manslaughter is. Manslaughter is basically you killed